Hello, my name is John Brink and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, the capital of Northern BC. An amazing place, the most beautiful place on earth for all intents and purposes. You must come and visit Northern BC. The other thing interesting about Northern BC, and I always bring that up during my podcast, is that the annual gross domestic product of the province of British Columbia, the GDP, is generated in Northern BC. And I always say that because then I look over my shoulder to the fellows in the south. I say, don't forget it. And and the other thing that today we have a special guest, and her name is Tami Kalsbeek.
Mm-hmm.
Did I say that correct?
Van Kalsbeek, close.
Van Kalsbeek.
Yes.
Yeah. And welcome to the show, Tami.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Tell me a little bit about your background. Are you from the region here, or?
Yeah, so born and raised in Prince George. I grew up here my whole life. Went to school up in the Heart Highlands and, had a pretty good childhood up there and played a lot of sports and was busy. Just being a kid. So. Yeah. Yeah.
And then the other thing about you is you have two children.
I have two boys, yes.
Yeah, what are the names?
Kyler, he's 13.
Okay.
And then my youngest is Kale, he's 11.
Yeah, so just at that beautiful age of growing far too quickly and getting, really interactive at that age in particular.
Yeah.
So that will keep you busy.
Absolutely.
And then you do a number of other things. You also work for Northern Health.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do there?
So I actually just recently got a new position at Northern Health. I'm an executive assistant for Indigenous Health.
Okay.
And I wear many hats. I'm also a part-time server at the Twisted Cork.
At where?
At the Twisted Cork, just over here around the corner.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm also a sober wellness and self-love coach, and I have a business called The Soul Project.
So tell me about the Soul Project in the case. You are also a counselor in regards to...
Yeah, I wouldn't quite say a counselor. I am a mentor for young women.
Okay.
I work with women that have struggled through trauma, addiction, self-sabotaging behaviors, and really work with them to see their worth and change their mindsets and live a life that they truly deserve. So,
how did you get involved in that in particular? Because it's a very delicate area, and for somebody to understand it is usually somebody that has difficult experience and then kind of hopefully recovered from it and then feel they had to give back. Is that kind of what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have struggled with addiction and mental health, some depression and stuff for 22 years actually. And so I'm not even sure where to start with that, but it really stemmed from a traumatic experience I had at the age of 5.
Okay.
And I didn't really realize how much that affected me until I was in my teens. I had turned to drugs and alcohol as a way of coping and escaping, trying to heal that pain. I also use drugs and alcohol to fit in, right? So it grew, it slowly started progressing my addiction. And then in 2020, just shortly after COVID had hit, I reached out for help and I went to a treatment center.
Now, if you talk about experience you had as 5 and not asking you questions that you're not prepared to answer or are not appropriate, I just hope for our guest to understand it. Was that abuse of some sort or another? Yeah.
So sexual abuse at the age of 5, pretty traumatic. My parents are wonderful people, loving people, and they did the best that they could at the time that it had happened. And they were told to have a counselor come in and talk to me about it, and that's what happened. But then it was over. It was kind of brushed under the carpet. And so for a lot of my growing up, I kind of had that in the back of my mind, but it was never discussed, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of had thought, am I making this up? Like, is this something, you know, I felt crazy a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, I think I was 21, and I had approached my mom and I had asked her if it had happened, and it had.
Yeah.
Which was a great relief,
Yeah.
because that's kind of when you can begin to work through it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you worked through it in terms of getting counseling and all of those kind of things, or how did that all go?
Well, it took me a long time, from 21 till I was 37 years old, to really address it. I suppressed it again through drugs and alcohol, trying to numb those painful feelings, right?
Yeah.
So when I got sober, that was such an opportunity for me to begin the healing process.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So and all the while you were struggling with it on your own, just nobody really to talk to about it.
Correct.
Or understanding it, and you were trying to suppress it by alcohol and those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Very, very embarrassed about it. So
Yeah.
it wasn't something that I would openly talk about, for
No.
sure.
And then, I'm kind of thinking about it. It's interesting that you say what you're saying. I was born in 1940, and then in northern Holland, eastern Holland, actually close to the German border, and we were liberated by the Canadian Army on April the 12th, 1945. But the times were extremely difficult. My dad was in the Dutch Army. And was already drafted in the Dutch Army before I was born, actually. Although my mother was pregnant with me at the time that he left in April of 1940. And then I had a sister that was 1 year older and a brother 2 years older. And so that left my mother alone for the next 5 years. We didn't know if he was dead or alive, and everybody kind of thought that he would likely not have made it. The last time that they saw him was in Rotterdam, and the bombing was of Rotterdam, and then after that for 5 years never heard back from him. So what I found is that trauma in particular, and that's really where I'm going with this, is that the hunger winter, as they called it, 1944-45, was very, very difficult in Holland. And when the Canadian Army came in and the German Army, whatever was left of it, tried to get back to Germany, we were about 10 minutes away from the German border, and things were pretty rough. They blew up all the bridges to slow down the people that were trying to push them back, and there was no food, and a lot of young people died because it was the hunger winter, they called it, 1944, 1945, and we had usually very little to eat. There was no fuel, and thousands of kids in particular, but also adults, especially the ones that were weaker, died. As a result of all of that, I found much later in life that I was affected by PTSD, saw far too many things, like saw one of our neighbors getting shot and bullet through the eye and back out of the back of his head, and then saw several arms and legs on carts, and even at 5 years old, that leaves an impression with you that you will never forget. The other thing interesting about it was that, and actually I got counseling for it even in my late 50s, early 60s, when in my relationship we were having difficulties, and we all solved the problem, but we went and sought counseling and to resolve those issues. And then the counselor kind of amazingly said to us both, that it maybe would be a good idea for him to talk to me alone about issues that still related to the war.
Mm-hmm.
And we agreed to do that, and that was dealing with what they call the inner child. So for a guest that maybe you're not familiar with, it is the little boy that never reconciled what happened. So and even so many years later, still affects them. So. And but I found that counseling was amazing, actually, and it helped the process. So and then but still even now, that part is still part of my life. I talk about it more now as I give presentations. The other thing, even more interesting, maybe, is that. That the other thing, I was not very successful in school. I failed grade 3. Nobody fails grade 3. You really give me.
I think my brother did.
Or did he? Oh my God.
He was grade 7. But yeah.
And I failed grade 7 3 times.
Okay.
Yeah. So and then they said, well, should we send him to the mentally challenged school or do we get him a job? Well, we got me a job at age 14, and then. So my dream was to go to Canada. I was so impressed by the Canadian Army that liberated us that I always knew I would go to Canada, to the land of my heroes, when I was 5. And that was my one dream. The other one was my dad ran a little lumber mill, and not his own. And then the other dream was that I would go to Canada and build my own lumber mill. And so those were my dreams. And then I was going to go when I was 17, and then I got drafted into the Dutch Air Force for 2 years. And then I finally went to Canada when I was 24.
Wow.
Started off, couldn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job. By the time I got to Prince George, you may wonder what this all means, is I had in my pocket, when I arrived here in the Greyhound station, $25.47.
Wow.
But I was going to build a sawmill and a lumber mill, and that was the objective. I counted my money several times, and that's what I had. And couldn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job. So I started as a cleanup man, and then from there and then kind of went forward and gradually started within a year and a half. I was the superintendent of one of the larger mills here, and that didn't go fast enough. Then I became a partner in a mill in the Yukon, Watson Lake, Yukon. Have you been there?
No, I haven't.
Don't go there.
Oh.
No, I'm just joking. But it's very cold there.
Yeah.
It may snow in July, and you don't know if it's late or early.
Yeah.
But so I was there for 5 years, and anyway, then when I was back in Prince George, so there I'm walking into this store here, still here on 3rd Avenue, Books on 4th, they called it, and so I saw this book, and I still don't know why I did it. I opened the book, and it was, the book's title was Driven to Distraction, and what it talked about is ADHD, and I thought, oh my God, that's me. And so I then took the book and I wrote in it in Dutch because I was ashamed of it. Now I finally know who I am. And then what I did is also, quite a bit later, is I wrote a book about it, because I thought, well, let me say this first. I was fairly ashamed of it, for one. That's not the case now, but then a lot of stigma is still involved. Mm-hmm. I was trying to build a lumber mill, and every so often I talked to bankers, and like they'll lend money to build my mill. And what am I going to do? Walk to the banker and say, okay, this is what I want, but I have a mental disorder, and it's called ADHD. But even so, will you lend me money? He would say, have a nice day, right?
Yeah.
Not today.
Yeah.
And so as that stigma disappeared. And more later, I thought I had to do a couple of things. I had to write the book about this one here, and I'm going to give you copies of these. That's why I have them here. Against All Odds. I say it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. And basically this is not so much about hurrah, hurrah, John, how successful he is, but rather about all the challenges along the way. And it includes, to a certain extent as well, at one point in my life, I was drinking more than was good for me. And, and it became a problem. I was then still smoking a pipe. That was not good for me either. And then I also was using, pills that were, for anxiety and, and that was not good for me. Although they were prescribed, but it became addictive, Xanax. And, and then I became somewhat addicted to it. And fortunately, my girlfriend at the time, which became my wife, kind of dumped me. And, and so that gave me a shock as to stop.
Yeah.
So I stopped drinking, I stopped with the Xanax, I stopped with the smoking, all in 1 week.
Good for you. That's awesome.
And, but it taught me a lesson in terms of, from there on in, not right away, but later, I became, like with this book that came out about 2-3 years ago, I became much more public about it in terms of, those issues. Same with PTSD, same with the inner child, and where it became more important for me to talk about it. And then I wanted to write another book about ADHD. I call it the superpower. And it makes me do 20 things all at the same time. A lot of people are not able to do that. And, so that's kind of what it became. I'm going to give you copies of those.
Thank you.
The reason that I tell you this is simply to say that that's why I admire people like yourself that have gone through a difficult time, are very involved in working with people that are struggling now, and and came back from all the adversity that affected you from the time that you were very young and fragile. No different than it did with me. That stayed with me from the time I was 5 years old. And and how important it is to not only reconcile it in some form or fashion, although you never will, it will be always with you, as it is with me. But at least it allowed me to talk about it more and to help others that are struggling.
Absolutely. First, that's extremely brave, I find, when people are able to open up and be so vulnerable and honest about what's going on for them. I think I was stuck in my addiction for so long because I was afraid, and there's this, a stigma with addiction, right?
Yeah.
After going to treatment and doing some of the work there, I realized, I have a voice, and the more that I'm open and honest about what's going on for me, the more that I'm able to heal and really work through some of that stuff. And I found that forgiveness for me was a huge step in my healing.
Yeah.
It's not forgetting what had happened. It's not saying it was okay.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is about, for me, it's about letting it go so I can not allow that to control me.
Correct.
And how I'm living my life.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And then to help others,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so how does that, so what do you do then? Do you do that to the organization that you developed? You call it the
Soul Project.
The Soul Project.
The Soul Project.
So
yeah.
what does that look like, the Soul Project?
So I started the Soul Project after coming out of treatment. I was really...
Now, if you say treatment,
Yep.
is that counseling?
No, a treatment center,
Okay.
for women. It was in New Westminster, and I went there for 60 days. They support the NA program, Narcotics Anonymous.
Okay.
We did a set of steps and learned a lot.
Did
from
you
there.
find it to be very, very helpful, critical to you? How did you become aware of it?
Just, do you mean the treatment center?
Yeah.
I just reached out for help, and Northern Health actually connected me with them,
Okay.
and I ended up going there. So.
Because the reason that I'm asking you the question is because there are other people out there that maybe are struggling like you are, that wonder how can I get the next step, and how do I go about that?
Yeah, unfortunately, treatment is not an easy in. It takes a lot of people, unfortunately, on wait lists, or they're denied, or their insurance won't cover it. So I feel very fortunate for being able to go. However, the NA and AA programs are completely free.
What does the acronym stand for?
So Narcotics Anonymous, and then Alcoholics Anonymous.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's meetings happening every day in Prince George that people can go to.
Where?
All over.
Okay.
Yeah. There's meeting lists that you can find, and there's meetings that even during lunch that you can go to and connecting with people. For me, honestly, though, I had to leave Prince George. I had to go to a treatment center and remove myself completely and submerge myself in recovery.
Yeah.
And so when I got out of treatment and I came back home, I didn't know who I was anymore. I lost my identity because I was so wrapped up in drinking. Drinking was my identity. My friends, that's what we did, right? So when I came back home, I didn't know who I was anymore. And so I was really on a journey to find out who I was and what I liked, what were my values, what were my dreams, what did I want to do with my life. And so I came across a course called, it was a self-love coaching program, and I figured, I'm going to take this, and regardless if I'm coaching other women, I've done something for myself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I did that for 6 months, and the tools that I learned there were extremely valuable. And so I had taken that and I rolled with it, and I started the Soul Project, and the Soul Project is now my way of being of service to other people.
So how long is it ago since you finished the program in New Westminster?
About almost 3 years ago.
3 years ago?
Yeah.
And you've been sober since that time?
Yeah.
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 And so, okay. And then, so now initially you started getting involved in this, and then it became more than just for yourself. You started talking to other people that were challenged with some of these issues, right?
Yeah, I think I wanted to be a voice for the people that didn't have a voice,
Yeah.
who were scared to come out and ask for help.
Yeah.
To show people that recovery is possible.
Yeah.
Right? So in NA or AA, in the steps, the 12th step is about being of service, right?
Yeah.
So my mission now is really to turn my mess into a message.
Yeah.
Right? To share my struggles, what I had gone through.
Yeah.
To show, women, people that, you're not alone, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so you're doing that now in addition to all the other things that you're doing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Soul Project is a bit of my side hustle. And so I'm working with women. I have a five-week program, a 3-month program, and then a 6-month program. And again, it's just really giving women the tools to rediscover who they are, to build them, to go through forgiveness being number one, right? Self-acceptance, self-love, self-care, all of those things that we need to feel comfortable in who we are. And I think that helps with removing addiction as well, right? Being good in who you are.
So how do people contact you, or you have it structured? Is it just on your own, or you have other people involved in the program, or?
No, so it's just me. And I am very open on social media, on Instagram and Facebook. I do TikTok videos, and yeah, people can I have a website too, and people can reach into me there.
Maybe tell our listeners what your website is, just to.
Yeah.
You feel comfortable with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's www.thesoulprojectwithtami, TAMI.com.
So say that once more.
Yeah. So www.thesoulprojectwithtami.com.
.com. And then you started that how long ago?
I think I've been doing this now for I want to say almost two years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you do it from your house, or?
Yeah.
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 And so the typical thing would be somebody contacts you, you set up a program that, depending on you kind of find out what the person's challenges are and their motivation in terms of where do you want to go from there, and then you kind of say to them, okay, you can follow this or the other things. That's kind of the layout.
Yeah.
And there's cost involved?
There is cost involved. I've always struggled with asking for money. I believe that, my energy, my time is an exchange. But there is a cost involved with my program. I have workbooks and stuff that I go through. I meet my clients online via Zoom.
You get value for money. It's not overdone. It's just
Yeah.
to cover your costs
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
your time, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay.
Yeah. But again, I've always kind of struggled with asking that, and I'm working through that. I'm totally new to this, so.
But you need to have ways of recovering cost as well, because your time is valuable as well, right?
Yeah.
And obviously it's based on a commitment that you have. It's not, a place to make money, but first and foremost, from what I hear of you and read about you, it is a commitment that you have. Other people that have been going through this as you have, to help them, and in fairness, you need to cover your cost at least, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And so, yeah, I've created my own workbooks, and again, I work with women to, recognize what their limiting beliefs are, what's holding them back, giving them, talking about spiritual principles, and finding out what your values are. Just a lot of self-discovery. A lot of self-discovery work. There's, you talked about inner child work, and that's some pretty heavy stuff. I don't claim to be a therapist or a counselor in any way. I am a coach, and so there is some child work, inner child work, a lot of mirror work. So positive, feeling good about what you look like, positive body image and whatnot. But yeah, that's all a part of my program.
Yeah, the reason that I mentioned the inner child, because it had an amazing effect on me. I never even heard of it, until the counselor said it to us, that he wanted to spend some time with me and talking about that. I had no idea, so, and then when he started talking about it, it became clear in my mind, okay, that makes sense, because that was the little boy that still was there. It was all the anxiety and the fear of losing his mother, that really never left. And until we reconciled, very emotionally, very, very intense, so
Absolutely.
And
I find those moments in our life really shape who we are, and I didn't realize it until I was clean and sober, right? I didn't realize how much it had affected me.
Yeah.
But I truly believe that we have to go through these things, these struggles, through these lessons, to get to a place where we are now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And one of the first places is, Tami, likely is recognizing it and being willing to deal with it, right? And understanding it. And then the other part is not to feel ashamed about it, you know, and being open about it, and if you wish, being vulnerable. You know, that's what I found with my book that I wrote. You know, you know, that I wanted to be very open about all the things that happened, including all the emotional things that are all going along with it. And you know, that a lot of people misunderstand sometimes that entrepreneurship, you know, and people that look like they have these lumber companies or whatever they have, you know, and that is all very glorious, and it looks like, you know, that probably most of the time what you're doing is bringing money to the bank and planning for holidays. Well, it isn't. Entrepreneurship is usually highly overrated in terms of what it is. I'm not discouraging anybody, but it can be very hard on families. You have to be willing to put up with all the stress and all the pressure along the way, and sometimes that's not very beneficial for families. And unfortunately, it cost me one of my marriages. You know, so yeah.
Yeah, no, a lot of self-motivation and dedication, and
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So they. So then, talk a little bit about Northern Health. You know what. You know, so you started there a while ago already? Or?
Yeah, so I've been with Northern Health for five years.
Yeah.
And like I said, I just got a new position there as an executive assistant, and I'm feeling very grateful for these opportunities that have been coming into my life. And yeah, just I think, you know, being able to heal and work on yourself, and being grateful for the things that you have in your life, it just opens the doors for you.
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate to be working in this new position, and yeah, things are looking good.
Yeah, and I kind of think I read in here that it was, how many days ago you wrote down here somewhere, 800 or so, or? Yeah, over 800 days. Tami is over 800 days sober.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe reaching 900 now, actually. Yeah.
Amazing.
You lose count after a while. You lose
Yeah.
count. Yeah.
Yeah. So the.
Yeah.
So where do you go from here?
That's a good question. I think I just really want to focus on giving back to the community and working with women. I you know, maybe one day I'll write a book and share my story. And
I like it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why I give you mine. So what I said is, it took me, as I said, 80 years to live it.
Yeah.
20 years to think about it. But that means 20 years to think about it means really starting it, stopping it, starting it, stopping it, and then saying, how do I do this? How do I go about it? Because, and I encourage you to do it, but at the same time, you know, once you start the process, talk to me about it as well, so I can maybe help you along the way. Is that it is more complicated sometimes than it appears to be, and then, but that's nothing to discourage you. Is that, you know, once I did the first one, because this is against all odds. It's an autobiography, and I knew once I write it, I had to do it well, because you cannot say, okay, well, I did that one, now I do another one.
Yeah.
You had to do it pretty much right. So, and then it became a question of, you know, that it always involves a bit of a team in terms of, although amazingly with my failing grade 3 and grade 7 3 times, I'm a very good writer.
Yeah.
Amazing, you know, really. and it kind of makes the point that I believe it is the superpower, you know, that I was just not very good at sitting in the classroom, and my mind was elsewhere, you know, so, so then we developed this, what should it look like? The story, obviously, I already had developed, and then gradually I said, if I don't do it now, it will never be done.
I was going to ask you a question. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just curious. So was it more of, you know, you just kind of writing out your entire life from, from when you can remember to now, and then kind of giving it to somebody to help you write it? Or was it?
No.
No?
I wrote most of it, and then I still had somebody involved on the editing part of it.
Yeah.
And then different input, like you can see here, there are pictures in it as well. Then the layout of books, very important. We have people involved that help us with the art of it. What should it look like? What should the cover look like? What should this be like? What should be written here? What should it look like there? And then who can I get to endorse it? And what makes an interesting story? And and then the other thing about it, that if you look at the back, I'm not going to charge you for it, but tell me what the price is of the book.
$25.47.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'll sign it before you give. So that was important about it. And then, so what is helpful in the process if you write a book is to have other people that could be part of the team, is read the story while you are writing it, give you ideas here and there, and obviously you have a very, very interesting story to tell, especially of where your career is going now, and it's a work in progress as you go forward, right? And and as you're already doing with your soul project and working with other people that are challenged, a book would be extremely appropriate for you. The other thing that I've done as well, as you already know because you're part of it, is I'm very active in podcasting, and I don't know if you've seen any of the podcasts that we are doing or that I'm doing. Is they deal with all kinds of areas, nothing in particular. Then we're doing a segment of podcasts that are dealing with the forest industry and transition, because it's very much of a topic around the region here, and I'm in the forest industry. But the other topics, they go from anything that we believe is interesting from individuals, that are unique in some form or fashion. And then our podcasts are being watched around the world, really.
Oh, wow.
And, this morning we did a podcast with a lady in Slovenia, Central Europe, talking in particular about my experience during the Second World War and all the things that went with it. Bit of an emotional one even now. The more I talk about it, it's still emotional to me. To her it was important because she has been interviewing people that were exposed to the war and all the other things that happened in Central Europe, Slovenia and places like that. And about especially the Second World War and all the things that happened then. And so it was very, very interesting, actually.
So you were on the other side you were in this seat.
I was being podcasted. Yeah.
Very cool.
And so, but we will still show it on our media, I believe on Friday.
Okay.
It shows you basically what it does, Tami, is that our podcasting is not only as you and me are sitting here, that are being watched over the world, but it is also that last week, and we're doing more and more of that, is we were podcasting with a forester, being very active in the Swedish forest industry, that I was podcasting, and how that works when I'm podcasting somebody, that is not here, then it would be on the screen there where I see your picture on the screen and I would be on the other side. And so while I'm sitting on your location, I'd be podcasting the person on that, and that is now also part of our podcast. I don't know which one it is, 85 or 86 or so.
Okay.
Where we, and again, very, very popular. I believe that one has been watched by 125,000 people or so. Amazing, really. So our social media had in December 1.2 million viewers, and this month already in January we are up to close to that, 990 or something like that.
Very
so it's
successful.
becoming more and more interesting.
Yeah.
And obviously from my perspective is that that from this location there is nothing that we cannot interview from around the world, and we will do more and more of that, so.
Yeah, no, I love what you're doing, and shining a spotlight on important topics and situations. So I cannot thank you enough for this opportunity to be here and share my story and the message of, that recovery is possible. So.
Yeah, and I think it gives encouragement to the people that are watching, in particular, by you being so open about it and giving your website and that people can contact you, and not doing already that you can help with your experience, and and I think that is becoming more and more important, and same as with ADHD, that used to have a stigma attached to it. Now more and more it's more, the frequency of occurrence of ADHD much higher than most people ever anticipated before. Yesterday I was talking to a friend of mine, that has some physical challenges right now she's dealing with, and when I talked to her, is that I also talked about, I had sent her this book, and then I told her I would send her this book as well, and she said, oh, that's interesting that you do that, because that's a coincidence, because my two, I don't know if it's two boys or a boy and a girl, were diagnosed with ADHD. Oh. So I said to her, I'll send you 3 books. Yeah. I sent this one and one for each one of the kids, and the kids are about the same age as yours are. And and I think I see that all the time, more and more, where people that have had challenges with this, not being very successful in what we know as the traditional way of learning, that they are more willing to speak about it and look at even changing the schooling system the way we understand it. Mm-hmm. And I think that again is very important.
Absolutely, yeah. You're speaking for those that don't have a voice,
exactly,
or are afraid to speak up. So.
And that's the whole objective.
Yeah.
So anything else that you want to talk about?
No, I think we covered a lot of it. I should mention that a side thing that I do from the Soul Project, I started a Sober Girl experience. And so it's for women that are currently sober curious, or just tired of doing things that revolve around drinking. So it's for women here in Prince George. So it's just a group of us, and we go out and we do just fun things that don't revolve around drinking. So bowling, hiking, pole dance classes.
I love it.
Yeah, so it's totally free.
How do people get to know about it, or to contact you, or?
Yeah, so again, it's on my social media pages, Facebook and Instagram, and there's also a link on my website.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do we have the addresses for it? All of them, or is that what you gave me already?
That's what I gave you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say it once more then, just to make absolutely sure.
Yeah, www.thesoulprojectwithtami.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to find a pen here, and if I don't have one here, then Scott will bring. Oh, did I?
There's it. Sure.
Thank you. So I'm going to sign this.
Thank you very much.
Tami.
Thank you.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you very much.
I would give you a hug, but we got this on. We'll do that after we stand up and got rid of this.
Sounds good.
Thank you for sharing your story with me and our guest. And thank you very much for being on my podcast.
Yeah, thanks for holding space for me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Tami.
Thank you.